And then she was like, all right, I guess I'm done. It's been so good for both of us.
They're going on more dates now.
Right.
It's like, you know what? You're kind of a delight.
Jay, hello. How you doing, buddy?
How's it going, Tom?
It's going good. You're, they sent me a bunch of links to what you do and everything. It's all very impressive.
Really?
Yeah.
Curious what?
Well, your bio, whatever you've written on that, you know what I mean? The professor of psychology, I don't know even what all these things are. The postdoctoral psychology at Tufts University. What's Tufts University?
Yeah. Oh, you don't know Tufts? Yeah, it's just a school it's outside of Boston.
That's up.
The only thing I knew about Tufts before I worked there was Elaine Bennis went there in Seinfeld, and that was like, I'd never heard of it, but she clearly is referring to it like she's like, I went to Tufts, all right?
Okay. Did they do the not so Tufts joke on Seinfeld? Like I went to not so Tufts?
They did. They needed you in the writers' room.
And then FSU. I went to FSU and lived down in Tallahassee, which is really just South Georgia. Did you go there, or did you do that?
I went to FSU. Yeah, I went to grad school there. I was there for 5 years. It is. Yeah, it's like 30 minutes from Georgia. I grew up out west in California. I was like, all right, what are the good grad schools with professors studying what I want to study? And I saw Florida State. I was picturing a very different.
Right.
I was picturing palm trees, Cuban food, beaches.
Yeah, you ended up.
Guess what? Yes. Yeah, swamp, Confederate flags. That's.
It really is. So you went there for
Yeah.
graduate school, and you went to University of California. So, how many years of college were you?
It was 4 years at UC Santa Barbara, 5 years of grad school at FSU. Tufts was like a year of training, post PhD. So.
Like 10 years of school. Wow,
About
how
10
old are
years. I'm 40.
Okay, wow, you look a lot younger, or I'm just older and people look younger.
He's sexy, bro.
Yeah.
You can say it.
Yeah.
EJ's sexy. That's what
And how long? And you also do comedy. So how long have you been doing comedy for?
3 years.
How would you describe like behavior science to someone who's the dumbest guy in the room? You know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah.
Encapsulate what that means.
I mean, it's just the science of how people think, how they make decisions. So, I mean, a lot of people have all sorts of ideas about how people function and what works, but behavioral scientists they're just collecting the data and seeing what really works. They're running laboratory studies, or they're going out into the field and really carefully comparing these things and testing to see. This is where you probably know about nudging, where they'll test. A lot of behavioral economics is just psychologists and then some economists collaborating and bringing psychology into economic decision making.
Right. Yes.
And they'll see what sorts of situations nudge people toward making better decisions for themselves, and then you implement those.
Sort of would a layman's version of that be when the Fed is controlling interest rate to stop inflation versus start inflation?
It's even smaller, how you word the form on, Dan Ariely talks about this when you are asking people whether they want to be organ donors.
Oh, yeah.
Huge difference what the default is. If it's an opt-in versus opt-out, there are all sorts of ways. If you just make a decision easy for people, they're in the smallest ways, they're far more likely to make that decision.
Who's the Republican wordsmith guy that was like he really changed the way that they used language, like they changed the estate tax to the death tax. Same kind of thing.
Oh,
and
right,
it affects people how they.
Totally.
Frank Lutz or whatever his name is.
Wording, all sorts of.
And how powerful that is on our minds.
Yeah.
That's an example, in propaganda, when they talk about the way they control society's thoughts by the. Like you're saying, the way they.
Yeah. You can use it for whatever the hell you want. It could be good, it could be bad, but there are all sorts of ways you can nudge people toward. Thinking and feeling certain things.
Do you know this guy out of Raleigh, this Ariely guy, Dan Ariely?
Dan Ariely.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. You have a book. He's written a few books, and this one's about dishonesty.
Yes.
And he's great. I think he's brilliant. Does amazing work. I've met him a few times, but he has a recent controversy about potentially people are wondering if he fudged some data.
Really?
Which is terrible. It's the worst thing for science to be just making up your data.
Funny that he's doing a thing on honesty.
He's the expert on dishonesty, and it looks like
he's dishonest.
Someone on his research team did something wrong, and he was the lead researcher. But he's claiming he doesn't know, but it does not look good. I don't know what happened with it. That was months ago.
That's interesting. Because he's
Hey,
talking.
EJ, take him down.
Yeah, well, because this book specifically was interesting to me in that how it talks about, you know, like, again, how much we all lie for no reason, you know, like, you know, like even a white lie, like somehow, which by the way, I hate to make it about race, but why does the white lie get to be the good one? You
We all know why. We all know why. It's not even a question. Man. I was watching this like nature thing, and you know they were talking about the different types of gorillas or whatever. And, you know, like mature alpha male gorilla, you know, it's a silverback, and they call the younger males, they call them blackbacks. But like but like he keeps saying these terms throughout. He was like the strong power silverback and the low inferior blackback.
Right.
I was like, Jesus, bro. Tell me how you really feel. They gonna get silver one day. Goddamn. Yeah. Give a nigga some time.
At least he didn't say that. That's funny. So that's interesting that he's shot. The other thing, and then I saw where you talk about your team is trying to figure out what determines the contents of one's thoughts. That's a big sentence to wrap your head around. Like, and I've been thinking on my thoughts over the last few months because he gave me another book that this Power of Now thing where it's watching your thoughts and watching your mind and watching that. I never realized, and I've read, you know, the Bhagavad Gita and a lot of the Hindu philosophers and say, you know, I mean, that's been my thing, you know, to try to fucking figure this out. And somehow this is making it the point in a way I've never thought of before, which is that how much time my mind spends in the future. Yeah. Or in the past, either beating yourself up or reliving it, and almost none right here. Why is it so hard, right, to stay? And I have a couple other notes here like that relate to that, like how much you said you don't even know if we are consciously making the decisions, if it's not, some of it's a lot of that's unconscious, and the consciousness is concerned with keeping us out of the now. Why would it do that? That's insanity.
Yeah. Conscious thought is very interesting. So it's like the part of ourselves we identify with the most. It's what we're aware of, right? But there's a lot happening in our minds. Freud is probably like the most well-known psychologist. He said a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah, wasn't most of his
We
stuff
mostly just make fun of him for all of his
weird
fetishes that he didn't know he was just confessing in his theories. But the one thing he said that all the decades of research since his time has supported is this. He talked about our conscious thought, our consciousness as being just like the tip of the mental iceberg. And like most of what our minds are doing, including the behaviors it's putting out, totally unconscious. We don't have access to most of what's happening in there. And I mean, that just makes sense. Like this ability to like have thoughts and think about tomorrow and, you know, stress out about the conversation we had last week. That's all very new in terms of like the evolution of minds. That's pretty recent in that history.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like ants aren't walking around thinking about what they're going to do this weekend, you know?
Right.
That's not in nervous systems, this part of our brains where we're imagining stuff, very new. So nervous systems don't need that.
Do you mean very new in the history
phylogeny, in the history of like the family tree of species?
But it's not like within the last 100 years. It's within the last
right. And other animals that are close to us have like versions of it, but are not. They're far less elaborate than ours. A lot of people are trying to pin down how our conscious thought looks different than other animals, and everyone has different theories. It's always moving. It's like, okay, it's self-awareness, but it's like, I know other animals, if you test it properly, they have some self-awareness. It seems to be something like thinking about the non-present, being able to simulate, like mentally simulate things that are not happening now.
But your mind doesn't. Does your mind know that they're not happening now, or does it treat like?
Not really. Yeah, it treats it the same.
So your physiology is
right.
being affected as if it's a real event.
Yeah. What's special about humans, I think, is, and I mean that a lot of other people think, is we live between kind of two realities where, we're able to mentally simulate actions and events that are not happening, but our brains, experience them as if they're happening, which is like really valuable. Then you can sort of test things without having to go through the work or engage in the risks of actually doing this thing that could be bad.
Right.
And that's why we can follow all sorts of rules. Like if you train a dog can learn all sorts of crazy things, but you have to catch the dog in the moment, like getting on the couch. You can't just get home and see hair on the couch and be like, hey, you weren't supposed to do that. They don't know what you're talking about. You got to catch them, jump on the couch, right?
Right. You can't walk in and be like, how many times did I tell you not to be on the couch?
Yeah, they're stuck. Other animals are stuck in the present. So you got to catch them in the moment. But we're like the only animal we can like learn. We can learn to.
We're almost never in the present.
Yeah. People will study this. They'll do these experience sampling studies. It looks like about half the time we're not in the present at all. We're thinking about other things. So.
But are we unconsciously in the present? You know what I mean? Is the
unconscious is doing way more.
Or the subconsciously in the present?
Yeah. The unconscious is doing stuff in parallel. It's like it's doing a crazy amount of stuff that we're not aware of. And our conscious thought, this is what Kahneman talks about in his thinking fast and slow. The unconscious is fast.
Right.
We're constantly processing what our bodies are feeling, sounds that are coming. That's where the name cocktail effect comes in, where someone says your name and you're there immediately.
Right.
Or they say something interesting to you and you tune in. Your unconscious is constantly scanning all kinds of information and is ready to like clue you into that, but without you knowing, it's still processing that stuff. And the conscious is the slow one. It's like we can only focus on one thing at a time and very slowly. But it's very beneficial what we can do with that. Yeah, it's like this space where we can mentally simulate. Like, I can just tell you that if you go to this part of town, like, it's not going to be good. Or if you do this, if you break this rule, that'll be bad. And just you sort of simulating that, you can kind of teach yourself to avoid that thing. Like, that's something you couldn't do with a dog. You can't just explain to them. You got to have them do the good thing and reward them, or do the bad thing and experience that it's bad. But we can just imagine that it's bad, and that's just as real. So this is like this is good because then it gets us to follow rules and make more complex choices for ourselves than like other animals could, because we're going through all these different paths. It's sort of a multiverse in our heads. We're actually experiencing the thing and then going down the one that we like. But it's also bad. This is where like phobias come in. Right? Like a lot of, like the two most common phobias outside of like social phobias are snake and spider phobias.
This guy dreamed about him for a month.
Oh, is that what you were talking about?
He's trying to kill a spider after he watched Arachnophobia.
You got a spider phobia?
Yeah, it's like a. See, I don't even know if it's a phobia at this point. I don't fuck with them. Like, it's genuine.
But if a spider were to show up on the table right now,
I'd smack the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They make you pretty uncomfortable. Have you ever been bitten by a spider?
I believe so. Like, I've had like spider bites and I'd be like, oh shit, something fucking bit me. When did this fucking happen?
Yeah. But you can't pinpoint.
Yeah,
so
it was
watching Arachnophobia as a kid.
Yeah, I did watch Arachnophobia as a kid.
Yeah.
And I had one dream with my entire like. I grew up like right between like on the border of like High Point, Jamestown, and Greensboro. Like just right dead in the middle of it.
Right.
And I had a dream that like entire area from like GTCC to the Lowe's to like the Harris Teeter on Gate City, that like that entire area, everyone just turned into like ginormous tarantulas, bro.
Yes.
Like I ran outside, it was tarantulas. I ran back inside.
What
My
do you
pants
mean,
were in
yes?
the middle of morphing.
This is
I was
the
like,
danger.
bro, what the fuck?
No, I'm just saying.
I was like, what the fuck?
This is a great example of why most snake and spider phobics have never had a single bad experience with a snake or a spider. But in their heads, they've imagined it enough times.
Yeah.
It's as if they have.
Right.
So they've got like PTSD from things that never really happened, but that had happened in their.
See, the thing is, I'm mad cool with snakes.
Yeah.
Like I was low key like I wasn't a reptile kid, but like I was super curious about like animals.
Yeah.
But for
Snakes
insects,
cool.
Specifically spiders, like, fuck out of here.
What as a young man made you go like, this is the field I want to explore?
I mean, I started out as a computer science major. I thought I was going that way. Like I was way into that. I was like programming my own games in high school and everything. But I've always been curious. I always like to learn. I was very interested in philosophy.
Right.
I mean, just big questions like why the hell are we here?
Why does the world exist?
Yeah, why does the world exist?
That's the biggest
what's the meaning
question
of
of all
life?
time.
What are we?
Yeah.
What the hell should we be doing with our time and with our lives? And I took some philosophy classes looking for that, but it was all like I took the wrong ones. Clearly, it was all like Venn diagrams and stuff. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It was all if P, then not Q, whatever.
Yeah.
It was trash. I didn't. And then I took a social psychology class, and it was all the same questions I went to philosophy for, but they were running experiment. They're like doing actual studies. They're starting with the question of like what makes people happy.
Right.
It was like let's go out and like let's run experiments and see. All right, we think it's this. Let's have some people do this, some people do a different version of it, and see who ends up happy. And that was like the coolest thing to me, to be answering like these big questions, but in this really like
I'm
very
all like, how do you define happy?
right. And that's and there's a lot. They talk a lot about that, and
I think that's why we don't have peace in the world. We don't have a.
Yeah.
We don't have a. We don't even have really
we don't
a
even know what the
definition.
hell happiness is.
We don't even know what peace is. Like we're not.
Yeah.
We always say we want peace, but we never do it. We never lift a finger to help produce that on a societal level, on an individual level. We don't even have a definition of what peace is. So of course we'll never achieve it because we can't.
Yeah, I mean, we know what it's not. It's not killing other people.
Yeah.
Bombing people.
Yeah. Peace is relative.
It is relative.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the world's not at peace. But I feel like we in peace right here. You know what I'm saying? Like we Gucci right
Yeah,
now. Relative. You
But
know
if
what I'm saying?
but if you go down even further, like then it's like that thing of like, are you, inside of you, are you at peace? Like that, there's probably that war within that is then acted out. In my theories, you know what I mean? Like that same shit that's happening inside, the turmoil that we have in ourselves and in our interpersonal relationships, gets magnified by the
things that we do.
By everybody having that same thing, and then it gets acted out sort of on societal level. That's I don't know where I even get that idea, but that's sort of what I've come to. Like, you know, maybe that's goofy, but
I mean,
I just think that everything the world can be broken down to the microcosm of the individual.
Yeah. You know, I'm trying to learn, like, bro, how can I befriend like hella alt-right? Like, can I change the world? Like, just trying to challenge my own like conceptions or preconceptions or whatever of the world. Because even like for a while at the beginning of this year, like I was just like, yo, I'm not going to do social media for like 2 months. It's just to see like if it changes anything about me. You know what I'm saying?
Did it?
Yeah. Because it was kind of like, I realized, like the first month I realized, I was avoiding talking to, I guess, like more redneck looking white people. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then it's just like when I wasn't consuming content that was just like, these white people did this to this black guy.
Yeah.
And these people, it was just kind of like, these are just fucking people. And then it was like, I'll start saying, hey. And then before you know it, it's like, I'm able to have a conversation with someone. And it's just, not once did I think about, this guy's probably a fucking Trump supporter. It's just kind of like, this is just some guy in the grocery store waiting to pay for his shit so he could feed his family or whatever. I'm also waiting.
It's weird how separating it is. Like when I got off Facebook and even when Twitter, it's like I'm definitely more at peace now. But I'm just switched to another version. I'm on TikTok or whatever, watching. I'm consuming it more than I'm participating in it now. The effortless mental processes and strengthen our willpower seems to be the thing you're working on. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing I was wondering. Like you say, like you work on one of your strength is how to strengthen people's willpower, or that's the way you're like, how do I cash in on all this work I've done? I have to find my niche to sell, or is it that's just where your general research has taken you? That's
a place my research ended up. I do think it's interesting. I was very interested in just like the self for more philosophical reasons like we talked about. But my PhD advisor at FSU, I mean, he's studied all kinds of things related to the self, but at the time he was studying self-control. So that's what a lot of our work together was on. And that is interesting. Yeah, it's just all about kind of increasing willpower, but also realizing that willpower isn't even really where it's at. I mean, the whole topic is just, all right, how do we get ourselves to do the things that we want to do? That's essentially what it is. Because that's tough, and that also goes back to conscious thought is not the boss. It's just the tip of the mental iceberg. It's the thing we identify with because it's what we're aware of, that voice in our heads. We think it's in control because we sometimes experience like, okay, I'm thirsty. Then you go like get a drink of water. But it's not in control by any stretch. Lots of cool research showing it's really the unconscious that's guiding our behaviors.
Right. I think he talks about that too.
Yeah.
Too.
Again, conscious thought is new. It wasn't even around. We don't need it to navigate the physical world, to survive, to do most things. I mean, we need it to do the complex stuff we're doing in culture. But if it were in control, self-control would be easy.
It's not easy.
It is not easy because the mind we experience it like it's a unitary thing. Like we are us, we are our brains, and we decide what we do with our lives. But it's not, the mind is like, it's more
it's got
a
a mind of its own.
It's more like people use all sorts of metaphors, like it's like a Senate, or it's like there are lots of different independent things in your brain. Your brain is more like a collection of things, or like desires or goals, and they're all vying for your attention and your resources. So this is where our thoughts come from. The unconscious, there are all sorts of, like, I guess we could call them modules. There's like a module that's trying to keep you alive, a module that's trying to maintain your relationships, so there are all these different things in your mind trying to do different things. And sometimes they try to work together, but sometimes they're competing for your attention. And so the stuff that pops into your mind, it's when a goal or a desire becomes urgent enough, it sort of seizes your attentional resources, and that's what you start thinking about. It's coming from somewhere. It's a part of your brain that's trying to get you to do something, to focus on something, to solve some problem.
Right.
So anyway, self-control is all about, all right, you care about a thing. What's the problem? Why is it so hard to, you want to eat this certain way, or write this much, or exercise this much?
Yeah.
Why is it so hard?
Why is it hard? Because you have to establish the habits to make it unconscious?
Yeah, because there are so many other things competing for your time and energy and attention. So it's...
So wouldn't it, like, another thing that I'm sort of interested in is
Mm-hmm.
is addiction and how that's in the mind. Like,
Yeah.
So it's weird how quickly, though, like, if, let's say I have an unconsciousness that I've set up patterns, I've set up habits, I have willpower, blah, 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 and then for some people, a certain percentage of people, the first time they take a drink or the first time they use a drug, it changes everything. And then now the mind does that thing, I guess, what you're talking about, where now it's trying to figure out how to get that again.
Yeah.
Right? And so now all the buildup I've had of having a good diet and making good decisions and the habits I've established and made they all go away just because the power of wanting a drug. Like,
I
that's
think,
weird.
I think our behavior is ultimately, it's the path of least resistance, most rewards. The thing we expect is going to give us the highest payout as soon as possible. We think it's just, if we know something's good for us, but there's so many things influencing us. It's all the different desires we have, and everything in the environment is feedback too. So like, good self-control, it's not just willpower, it's not just willing yourself or wanting it enough. It's like removing temptations, removing yourself from the environment that's pushing you toward. It could be a place, it could be a person. Right. Taking care of all the other things, everything that's nudging you toward that, you got to change or remove.
That sounds so difficult to establish that willpower. Like,
it is, yeah. Most people who look like they have good willpower, really what they're doing is they're avoiding temptations. So people who are resisting temptation, they're usually avoiding it altogether. Like, they'll do these experiments, they'll bring people in who look like they have good willpower, but if you put them in front of the temptation, they're no better than anyone else. It's just in their everyday lives, they're avoiding that situation to begin with.
Right.
They're structuring their lives, they're not being tempted, they're creating habits. That's the thing, it's not going to take willpower anymore if it's just an automatic habit for you. And the way you establish a habit is just do it over and over again.
Right.
Until
it really talks about, like, when, like, sometimes it's like, let's say food, like in the willpower of food, like, you make those good decisions all day long, and then, like, as you get tired or as you get more hungry, like, you can make them all day long, and then your brain will rationalize, oh, you made all these great decisions all day. Then and somehow your ability to stick with your decisions breaks down as you continue to make the right decisions. Like somehow you lose the ability to.
Yeah.
You trust. Oh, I've done it, and then you fuck yourself in an instant, and it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, my advisor, he was known for. He called it ego depletion, but it's just willpower fatigued. Whereas like, there's a lot of data supporting this. The farther you go along in your day, if you're making a lot of effortful decisions, exerting a lot of self-control, you just kind of fatigue, and by the end of the day, I mean, that's when people are failing the most at self-control is at the end of a long day. That's when you're,
That's why they say junk food, like fast food and shit, is so addicting. It's because like the food is so processed that it literally takes your digestive tract less energy to break it down and stuff. So then it's just like, when you want to eat raw foods or just like cook at home or whatever, and it's not extra processed. That's why sometimes like it might feel like it's sitting heavier or it's taking longer for your body to process because it's like it wants like, I want that easy shit.
Speaking of this, he says I have this: food choices influence our ability to think and make decisions. How does the food affect your ability to make decisions?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
You got this too?
Yeah, Go ahead.
I hate being the dumb guy. Come on now.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. It's you.
This has nothing to do with nutrition. This is just some work, again, based on this idea that your self-control becomes fatigued throughout the day. We just tied thinking to energy, where like, if your body energy is low, you're also putting less effort and energy into your thinking. So like you're just falling back on like heuristics and whatever. You're making the kind of lazy decision when you're tired. So we just showed that if you like just give people a quick boost of energy, we'd give people like a lemonade that either had sugar or Splenda in it. And if you have the sugar lemonade, then suddenly people's decisions change where they're putting more thought. They're falling less prey to like random biases and irrational sort of shortcuts in the decisions they're making.
So would you come up with some hypothesis and then you guys designed experiments around how do we test this hypothesis, or
basically. I mean, there's like work already showing like, all right, there are certain irrational patterns in people's decision making. There's a whole bunch of these, and we just picked one. And one we show, all right, if we like mentally fatigue people first, we have them do some tedious task for a long time, they're even more likely to do that irrational thing when they make decisions. But if we like give them that tedious task and really wear them out, but then give them a sugar lemonade, that doesn't happen anymore.
Really, just is that simple?
That's the study, yeah. Just like an hour-long study of like we wear them out, and sometimes we give them a sugar lemonade, and then we give them. It was freshmen at FSU. We had them decide between some apartments they were going to live in like the next year, and like we just saw whether they were susceptible to sort of an irrational little thing we put in there, and they weren't falling for that as much if they had that boost in sugar.
Huh.
Is that what you suspected would happen?
That was the hypothesis we had.
Eric was telling me the person you do your studying with is your ex-wife?
We don't do research together, but we're professors in the same department. We work closely together, yeah.
Okay.
Talk about it.
Yeah. Were you working together first and then got married and worked together through the marriage?
We met in grad school at FSU. Then we got married, and then I started working at Wake, and then she joined a couple of years later, and then we split up like several years after that.
Okay. And you have a couple.
She's a neuroscientist. I'm a social psychologist. So our research areas are very different, but we're
What is a neuroscientist?
They study the brain.
And you're studying thoughts and consciousness, and she's studying the actual pathways.
She's actually looking at neurons. Yeah.
It's interesting. I read a book somewhere along the line too about like how the neurons fire through the synapse of our brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how it parallels into the universe the way the stars interact in the sky. Like the skies would be the neurons and space is the synapse, and then all the stars around are firing.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Brains are so complex. I could be getting this wrong, but I feel like it's the number of neuronal connections more than the number of stars in the universe, or something like that.
Crazy.
That sounds right.
So she's got some work to do.
Yeah, she's on like neuron number 8. Yeah. Specific studies I've done that stand out. I mean, yeah, a lot of my work has been on self-control. That's sort of the lens I've used to look at conscious thought and everything. I think the unconscious is very interesting to me. Like a lot of like my master's thesis was on like reminding people of different goals they have, but in a way that they don't notice. That's another thing that
Do you
is
use
real,
that on your
is, like,
kids?
Subliminal priming. I use all kinds of psychology with my kids. I don't know about that one. But yeah, the psychology is very helpful for parenting, I should say.
Really? In what way? Like, what would you give me a couple ways like you would?
Oh man, yeah. With self-control, one thing that is useful is like, all right, there's a big difference between like we talk about two different motivations. There's like autonomous motivation and there's controlled motivation, right? So like when something you're doing is motivated in a controlled manner, that's like something you feel like you have to do, you ought to do. Versus an autonomously motivated behavior is one that you want to do. It's one that you believe in or you think is fun or that you care about deeply. It's aligned with your values or whatever. Autonomously motivated things, easy. You want to do that stuff. You're excited to do it when you wake up. You do it well. If something is controlled for you, so this will be something like it's a chore, you're only doing it for the money, or you're doing it not to get in trouble or whatever. Very difficult. You're taking shortcuts. You don't like it. It's stressful. It's tiring. You do not do a good job. It sucks. You're unhappy. You're unhappy if a lot of what you're doing in your life is controlled. You're not happy. You're tired. You're not doing well. If a lot of what you're doing in life is autonomously chosen and driven, you're a happy person and you're doing good work. So a lot of self-control is just the things you're doing are controlled. If it's autonomous, it doesn't take willpower. You're going to do it.
Right.
So a lot of like getting kids to do things or like leading people to do things is inspiring them to want to do it. It's making it autonomous for them. So there are all sorts of, there's like, I'd say 3 or 4 very easy things to make something autonomous for another person, which are you make it fun.
Right.
Or you make it important. Or a really easy thing is you give them a choice. This one's, so like getting my kids to eat vegetables, you make it fun, you know, it's like there are these spinach bites that are in the shape of dinosaurs. You play around with them or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to bite the dinosaur's head off. My daughter loves that.
Right.
You make it important. My son, does jujitsu. He used to do gymnastics. He loves superheroes. Just tell him, you want to be strong like the Hulk.
Get under this nuclear.
Yeah. Right. Radiation. That's what it is. So yeah, explain to him the broccoli is going to make him strong. His backflips will get better, whatever. That's making him important. And then really easy, just give him a choice. Huge difference between here's your broccoli, eat your broccoli, and what would you rather have tonight for your vegetable? Would you rather have spinach or would you rather have broccoli?
Right, and then they make the choice.
Now it's coming from them.
Yes.
They wanted it.
Yep.
That's all it takes is giving them the option.
Like my dealing with my little boy got so much easier when he was young. When it was like, all right, we're either leaving in 7 minutes or 12 minutes. Which one do you want to leave in? And you already know he's going to pick 12 to 15. And so then he picks the time, and then it's like, all right, dude, time's up. And then it was so much easier to get him to leave.
Yeah.
Kids are dumb.
Huh? Yeah, well, I think no more parents have been dumb and not doing it the similar way, like not looking into ways to do that. We just sort of enforce our will on them, because that's easier.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
I think that you should write a parenting book, man. They're like,
oh yeah, I'd buy it.
Yeah, because like it's the same type of thing. It's like your decision making on how you're going to do you're either going to do it this way, or you're going to parent unconsciously, or you're going to parent, with proper decision making.
If they turn out bad, write a sequel.
Yeah. But what brought you from psychology to stand up? Again,
It was, yeah. It was the divorce. I mean, yeah. I think I always liked stand-up, but I've spent most of my life, I just kind of like do whatever other people are doing. And for my marriage, it was a lot of that. She liked to hike and camp and ride horses.
How much of that do you miss?
I have not gone. I hated getting dragged to the barn. And I have not gone on a single camping trip in the 3 years we've been apart.
How long before, once you realized you were going to get divorced, until you genuinely started to understand, oh, wow, this is a much better life?
It was, I mean...
Or do you still miss it?
We were still together. She just stopped hanging out with me. She started doing her own thing. And I was just sitting at home alone. I'm like, what the hell? I got to do something. That's when I started doing stand-up.
Really?
And,
so I got to do something. Might as well be stand-up. Like,
I mean, I always liked it. At the time, I was listening to a lot of comedy podcasts. And, yeah, I went and checked out a couple of open mics. Started doing it. Loved it immediately. So fun. Love the community. Love just the exercise of writing jokes, being on stage, all of it. Yeah, I mean, I think during then I was realizing how much I wasn't exploring my interests,
right,
and just kind of putting the marriage and her first. So, yeah, I mean, the day we spent months trying to figure out if we're trying to fix it. I think she was more going through the motions of like, let's go see a couples therapist,
right,
so I can check that box off before she was done. I think she was done for sure.
Yes.
But it was nuts. We had a few months of a couples therapist, and then a few months of God, what I wish I could remember the name of it.
Can you imagine, dude? You're a couples therapist, and in walk two people who would study the brain in different ways. I'd just be like, wow.
It felt like I didn't want to talk to them too. It felt like we knew people that they knew. It was strange.
Oh, right.
Damn.
But then there was another. There's a type of counselor who helps you decide if you're going to keep trying to fix the marriage or if it's time to get a divorce. So we had like a couple of months of that, and then she was like, "All right, I guess I'm done." And the next day, or maybe even that night, I was on the dating apps. I was ready. So I don't know. It's been great. It's been so good for both of us. It's been like the best divorce. We're both thrilled. We get along. We like hang out. And,
Y'all going on more dates now.
Right. Now she actually comes and sees my shows and supports some of the things that I do.
She comes to a lot of my shows.
It's like, you know what? You're kind of a delight.
You are kind of a delight. I appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
I feel like we just sort of scratched the surface too, but we'll do it again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
We're wrapping it up. Dumbest guy in the room. Thanks for watching.